I'm Woody Huffines, and I own the NerdsToGo in McKinney and Frisco, Texas, and this is Tech for the Untechnical. The Internet of Things security. Well, what's the next step? We've been talking about Internet of Things security, and we talk about making sure that you really want the devices in your house and the network that you have them on is secure. And when you install them, you pay attention to the application and the security selections, and now you got them installed, you got them on a separate network. Is there any ongoing responsibility? Well, I believe that there is. Like anything else, you have to clean things up. And with Internet of Things devices, especially Internet of Things devices that save history, you need to go clean that history out every now and then. There's things that you might have stored in your, say, Ring camera that you really don't need. And I'm not saying that you want to get rid of them, but do you really need what happened at your front door when they delivered a package back in July for your wife's birthday sitting out there on the internet? Probably not. So if you go in periodically and delete all the history, it gives less of a chance that something that you don't want out there is going to remain out there because you delete it. The same thing is true of Amazon's Alexa or Amazon Echo, Echo Dot, Alexa, all those things. There's an ability to go into the Alexa app, go look at your voice history, and when you find that voice history, delete it. There's no reason for you to know that you asked what the temperature was 3 days ago. You don't want the data out there. And there's a tag around each of those recordings because since Alexa's listening all the time, that Amazon has. If you delete the data, it gets rid of it. The same thing with Google Home. So ongoing maintenance of the information that you have on the internet, that's stored on the internet, that came from your Internet of Things devices is another step you need to take. After you get them secured, you still have data out there. Go get rid of that data. The next thing, and I mentioned in a previous video, make sure that you're putting the information in the forms that you want out there. In other words, if it's a Ring doorbell, do they really need your phone number? Do they need your email address? Maybe they need your email address, but do they need your main email address? Or might it be better for them to have a separate email address? We talked earlier about security, and one of the things you can do is have separate email addresses for separate purposes. This might be one of those instances. Another thing that most forms ask for, just as a matter of habit, is your address, your home address. Does the light bulb that changes color at voice command really need your home address? Before you put your home address in to a form or you're putting one of these Internet of Things devices in shape, pay attention to whether that's a really critical thing that that application or that device needs. A really good example of this is the Ring doorbell. I've got a Ring doorbell, and one of the things that Ring does is they have the neighbors part of Ring, where you can look at all the different devices around in your neighborhood and see that somebody had a package stolen or that somebody broke into somebody's car, or basically what it does is it scares the fool out of you because you think you got a whole bunch of crime going on in the neighborhood that's mostly some guy walking up and down the street exercising his dog, and somebody freaks out and posts it to the neighbor's site and goes, "Strange man walked in front of my house today at 2:43. Anyway, all of that is driven by putting your information, technically your address, into that application, which lets Ring know where your device is. And if they find a security vulnerability, anybody that hacks that database, or if that database gets out, they know where to go look for the devices that have security issues. So just generically, it's a good idea to think hard about what kind of information you give a company, but it is particularly important to think about that information in terms of Internet of Things devices. For example, let's say you're one of the people that decides that having a door lock that you can actuate over the internet, in other words, you can unlock your door from your office to let your kid in that forgot their key to home. If you think that's an important thing to do, don't do it. I would never do that. Never, ever. Yeah. Anyway, if you think it's important to be able to do that sort of thing, imagine this. The door lock gets a security vulnerability, and that security vulnerability is published. And the database of the people who have that door lock is also hacked and posted on the dark web. Now all the hackers in the world know, one, that your door lock has a security flaw, and two, exactly where to go to open the door that has that security flaw. That's kind of what I'm talking about. And this goes back to that idea that we talked about a couple of videos ago about the risk register. This is an idea about accepting that risk and understanding that risk before you have to accept it. So, 1, delete your old data. You don't need it. 2, be careful of the data that you put out there voluntarily. 3, and this is kind of next level nerdiness, but it's really handy. There's a thing in Google, and it's called Google Alerts, and you can just find it. If you search Google Alerts, it'll pop up. It's pretty simple to configure. And what you can do is put specific alerts in, and if there's a news story about that thing, you'll get an email from the Google Alerts that says, hey, there's a news story about that thing. In my case, because I'm paranoid, I want to know if there's a bird flu cluster, because bird flu scares me. And I've got a Google News alert for bird flu. And I've got Google News alerts for a couple of the nuclear plants that I used to work at because I enjoy reading what's going on at Grand Gulf. But you can do the same thing by putting a Google News alert in for each of the Internet of Things devices that you have. So if somebody loses a password database, if somebody has a security vulnerability that shows up, you'll get an email. So you don't have to read the technical press like I do every day to find out if there's a problem with Ring. So, for example, if you have Hue light bulbs, put a Google News alert in for any news story that has Hue light bulb vulnerability or Hue light bulb hacked, and Ring doorbell hacked, Ring doorbell vulnerability, or whichever of those Internet of Things devices you have, so that you'll get an update through your account, your Gmail account or your Google account, if there's a possibility that something's been broken out there with a device that you have in your home that you wouldn't otherwise see, so that you know that you need to immediately go see if you can update that device, which brings us to item number 4. Make sure these devices are updated. The Internet of Things devices are pretty small. They don't have a lot of computing power. So unlike your computer, they're probably not phoning home to check to see if there's an update that needs to be done, and the manufacturers aren't pushing those updates out. But one of the things that you need to do is constantly go check. I do it for this camera that I'm filming on a lot. Sony's got a great website, and I'll go out and see if the firmware has been updated for my camera. Now, Sony will usually send me an email because I signed up with them. But if you have an Internet of Things device, keep track of what the manufacturers are and hit those websites every now and then to see if there's a firmware update. And do that regularly, whether you get the news alert or not, because that's just good security hygiene to make sure that the places that are vulnerable because they're exposed to the Internet are kept updated so that anything that they've discovered that they can fix is there. I'm Woody Huffines. This has been Tech for the Untechnical. I own the NerdsToGo in McKinney and Frisco, Texas. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe and like button below, ring the notification bell when one comes out. You can watch it. And most especially, if you'd spend some time to give me some comments and let me know what else you'd like to hear about in terms of Internet of Things security, home computers, home networking, business, small business ideas for IT. We'll be happy to reach out to you and start that discussion through another video. Y'all have a good day.